thanks for tuning in to the Oxygen Alliance YouTube channel, where we share the Concentrator Talk virtual meeting hosted every Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. Central African Time. In the talk, we discuss different aspects of oxygen concentrator assessment, use, and maintenance. And please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell. Hello everyone, Happy New Year to you all. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and New Year holidays. My name is Mayulungu. I'm currently in Lilongwe, Malawi. Thank you for joining us for the first Concentrator Talk Call of 2023, brought to you by the Oxygen Alliance. I'm so excited to be back. We had an amazing year last year, 2022, where we shared a lot and we learned a lot from each other. So we have a lot more coming up this year, so we hope that you are going to be with us throughout the way. Today I'm joined by my colleague Fatsani Tamandikani, along with our usual technicians from OpenO2 and Sunrise. So on the technicians panel, we have Kowinda Singh joining us from Chandigarh, India. We have Eunice Msiska, Sharon Ngodzo, Naomi Langizo, and Aubrey Chinkunda joining us from Lilongwe, Malawi. So in case it's your first time joining us and you are not aware of what the Concentrator Talk Call is, so this is a virtual meeting that we host every Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. Central African Time. So here we discuss different aspects of oxygen concentrator assessment, use, and maintenance. So if you happen to have a problem that you are facing relating to oxygen concentrators, we always encourage you to send those problems you're facing to us through our email address, info@oxygenalliance.org. And then our technicians will do their best to come up with the right solutions for you that will help you to solve your problem. So normally I read out the questions and then I ask one of the technicians to respond. So if the technician has given a response and you have a comment or a question that you'd like to make, you can always raise your hand or you can just come off mute and then ask those questions. So we also have polls at the end of some of the questions. So when they pop up, I will explain how to access them. And today we'll also be having a special topic of interest that we normally have on each call. So this is where we pick a particular topic to talk about and discuss regards oxygen concentrators. So today we'll be talking about safety when handling oxygen concentrators. So Eunice Msiska is going to take us through that topic. All right, so I have a number of questions that we received, and we'll now jump onto those questions. And our first question says, I am working on the old model of DeVilbiss 515 concentrator, which uses the solenoid valve block. I have installed a pair of sievebeds with new zeolites, and the compressor is also in good shape. The only problem remaining is that the solenoid valve block is malfunctioning, and we do not have a spare valve block. But we do have a spare rotary valve. So they have a four-way valve block, but they do not have a spare rotary valve. So the question is, can I replace the valve block with the rotary valve? So I'm going to ask one of our technicians to respond to this question. So you can just raise your hand and then, we pick whoever is quickest. Okay, we have a hand from Naomi. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. The area versions of the DeVilbiss 525 had a solenoid valve, but then the newer models of the DeVilbiss 525 oxygen concentrators make use of the rotary valve, which opens and closes to allow the air to flow either from the compressor to the sievebed or from the sievebed to the exhaust of the concentrator. So even though the solenoid valve block and the rotary valve differ in their physical appearance, their working principle and their function is the same. So both valves are powered by the control board in the concentrator. So in the graphics, we have the rotary valve on the left and we have the solenoid valve block on the right. The only significant difference that is there between the two valves is the connectors on the control board. So the connector of the rotary valve has 9 pins, while the solenoid valve block has 4 pins. So if you try to replace a solenoid valve block with a rotary valve block, you need to switch and change the whole board, the whole control board, because the rotary valve block has 9 pins on the connector side and the solenoid valve block has 4. So if you try to replace it, you wouldn't have any place to plug it in on the control board. So that means if you want to replace the solenoid valve block with the rotary valve block, you have to replace even the control board for it to function properly. The functionality is the same, but they just differ on the connector on the control board. Thank you very much, Maury.
Thank you very much, Naomi, for that response. That was well detailed. And I'm pretty sure if you try out the solutions that she has suggested, that's going to work out pretty well for you. But I have one question for you, Naomi. So the scenario our friend encountered is they were trying to swap between the four-way valve and the rotary valve. So if I had a four-way valve from a different concentrator, would that still work on the 515? Let's say I take the solenoid valve from a J5 or a Cantor, would that work in the 515?
Okay. So it would depend if the connectors are the same. If they're not the same, it's not going to work. And if the functionality is different, if they work in a different way, it's pretty much the same thing that they're not going to work. But if they function the same way and they have the same connecting port, then it's going to work pretty much.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't know. Okay, we have a hand from Aubrey and Fatsani. Let's start with Fatsani.
All right, just to add a little more on what Naomi has already said, the solenoid valves across different models of concentrators, they differ in their operating voltages. So it might happen that this 515 is different from the concentrator that you wanted to get the solenoid valve from. For example, if the SAP concentrators, their solenoid valves, they use up to 200 volts DC, while some concentrators, they just need 12 volts DC for switching their solenoid valves. So this voltage differences wouldn't allow a solenoid valve from one concentrator to be used in another. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Fatsani, for that. So I guess you are just agreeing to the comment that Kelvin has just pasted in the chat. So he says also take into account the operating voltage. So yeah, it's what you've just explained. Aubrey, you also had a hand up. You can go ahead.
My comment was also about the voltage ratings. So Fatsani has already covered that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions from or comments from the other technicians or from the audience? We are free to ask or make those additional comments. Okay, no comments. So we have a poll at the end of this question, and I am going to launch that poll. So our poll says, have you ever replaced a solenoid valve block? Have you ever replaced a solenoid valve block used in the DeVilbiss 515 with a rotary valve before? So I am going to launch that poll and give it a few minutes for people to vote. So for those of us who are not aware on how to access the polls, if you are joining us from your mobile phone, then if you click on the menus option on the bottom right of your screen, there is a window that will open where the activities button is one of the listed menu options. So if you click on the activities button, you open up another window where you have the pause menu listed. And if you're joining us from your computer, just go on the icon on the far right of your screen. You click on that. That's the activities button. It opens up a window. And then once that opens up, the pause menu is also one of the listed options. So that's how you can access the pause. Right, so our votes are still coming in. It seems we have more people who haven't done this before. So I'll just be interested to know that whether you haven't done this before because you knew that maybe these things are not interchangeable, or maybe you just haven't encountered a similar situation. So yeah, if you care to share on your experiences, I think that would be great. You can just come off mute and share with us your experiences on this. Okay, so most people have voted, so I'm going to end the poll now. And yeah, most people haven't done this before. So if you happen to encounter a similar situation in future, I'm sure you're going to know how to get around it now with the explanation that Naomi has just given. All right, so we'll now jump on to our next question, which says, I've serviced a few oxygen concentrators. I have serviced a few oxygen concentrators, and some have cooling pipes with fins while others don't. What is the function of the fins? What impact do bent or damaged fins have on oxygen concentrators? So I'm going to ask one of our technicians to also raise their hand and then take this one up. All right, we have a hand from Sharon. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mai. Compressors for oxygen concentrators draw in air and compress it to increase its pressure. And according to Hamilton's law, also known as Gay-Luss's law, it states that the pressure of an ideal gas varies directly with the absolute temperature when the volume of the sample is held constant. So in simple words, when the pressure increases, temperature also increases. Hence, when the pressure is increased by the compressor, the temperature of the air also increases. This compressed air is cooled in air cooling pipes in order to lower the temperature of the compressed air that is to be supplied to the sieve beds. So some oxygen concentrators such as J5 and Cantor, just to mention a few, contain cooling pipes which are surrounded by fins. So fins are thin aluminium metal slats that are highly thermally conductive. They provide a large surface area to help heat disperse more quickly. So the cooling pipes are placed on top of a fan, as you can see in the graphics. So the fan pulls air through the fins and blows it into the compressor chamber. As the air passes the fins, it cools down the compressed air passing through the cooling pipes. When the fins are burnt or get damaged, the normal flow of air through the fins is disrupted, and the hot air still makes its way to the sieve beds because heat cannot escape as efficiently during the cooling process. As a result, the oxygen concentrators may develop problems if the heat exceeds the normal operating temperatures. One thing you also have to note is that if the heat goes to the sieve beds, then the purity will be affected. The concentrator's purity will be affected. You will not be getting good purity. Thank you, Mari.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for that well-detailed explanation. So, yeah, as she has explained, those fins are important in cooling our machines. So these things don't need to be running at very high temperatures. So if they exceed certain limits, then it becomes a problem. So for those of you that probably have worked on vehicles before, so this is something similar to the way the car, the radiator is designed in the car. It also has some fins which help in the cooling. So it's similar design with this one. So always make sure that you are extra careful when working with such model of concentrators because these fins are very fragile. All right, so we have another poll at the end of this question, and I am going to launch that poll. So the poll says, Did you know the use of fins that enclose the cooling pipes? So I'm going to leave it open for a few minutes and then people can vote. Okay, our votes are coming in, and it's a split. Some of us were aware, some of us were not. So yeah, it seems the majority of us didn't know the use of these fins in that surround the cooling pipes in the concentrator. So this is mostly found in the J5s or the Cantor models. So it's a good thing that someone asked us to elaborate on this question. So now, when you encounter a similar issue, I'm sure you're going to know how to handle it and how best to handle equipment with the fins so that you don't end up damaging them. All right, so I am going to end our poll and we'll now jump on to our next question, which says, hello, I am working as a procurement officer at a certain hospital. We are planning to purchase oxygen concentrators and I would like to know some of the accessories that are required for oxygen concentrators. I'm going to ask one of our technicians to take this one up. Okay, we have a hand from Fatsani. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mark. So, oxyconcentrator accessories are important for an oxyconcentrator and for oxygen therapy. So they prolong the concentrator's lifespan and also they help with delivery of oxygen to patients. So depending on the model, some oxygen concentrators come with accessories while others do not. I would advise you to research and find out if the model you are purchasing comes with accessories. And if it doesn't, you can purchase the accessories separately. So in this, I'll just explain some of the important accessories that will help with your procurement process and also explain their purposes. So an oxygen concentrator requires accessories like the humidifier bottles, nasal cannulas, oxygen masks, patient outlet tubing connector, oxygen analyzers, and filters. So I'll start with the humidifier bottle. All right, so a humidifier bottle is used to moisturize oxygen, thereby decreasing dryness during oxygen delivery to the patient. It provides some comfort to the patient and prevents drying of the nose, mouth, and lungs during the therapy of oxygen. So it is attached to the patient outlet fitting of the concentrator, and the oxygen passes through the distilled water in the humidifier bottle before it goes to the patient. So in the graphics, you can see the white bottle, that is a humidifier bottle that is connected to the outlet piping of the concentrator. Next, I'm going to explain about the nasal cannula and face mask. So the nasal cannula and face mask, they are required by an oxygen concentrator because they enable the flow of oxygen from the concentrator to the patient. So this is good when nasal cannulas and masks they come in handy and they are used to deliver oxygen to hypoxic patients. So nasal cannulas are flexible tubes that are placed under the nose, and then the tube has two nasal prongs that go inside the nostril and a smaller tubing to hook around the ears and hold the nasal cannula in place. On the other hand, oxygen masks, they cover the mouth and nose and are held in place using a plastic band that wraps around the back of the head. Next, I'm going to look at the patient outlet tubing connector, which is also known as Christmas tree adapter. So this is a connector that is used to connect the nasal cannula or face mask tubing to the concentrator outlet port. Sometimes, especially when the oxygen is being delivered to the patient at low flow rates, or there's a need of an oxygen flow speeder, a humidifier bottle is connected to the patient outlet feeding on the concentrator. So in these cases, to deliver oxygen therapy to the patient, there is a need for a device that can enable the connection of the tubing to the feeding or the concentrator. So in the graphic there, you see a Christmas tree. Why it's called a Christmas tree? Because it basically looks like a Christmas tree. So the Christmas tree has a word base with threads and is screwed onto the concentrator patient outlet feeding to enable the use of oxygen delivery accessories. So sometimes to prevent leakage from the Christmas tree, you can apply use thread tape on the fitting. Next, I'm going to look at the oxygen analyzer. So an oxygen analyzer is a tool that is used for measuring oxygen concentration levels that is produced by the concentrator. So if the hospital or workshop does not have one, it is good to purchase this because it is recommended by the World Health Organization to have at least one oxygen analyzer per hospital. So the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, recommends that an oxygen concentrator must be capable of delivering a continuous flow at a concentration of greater than 82%. So for the staff to ensure that the oxygen concentrator is delivering oxygen at that recommended concentration, they need an oxygen analyzer to check the purity and maintain the concentrator if need be. So this is the only way that they can check the purity. Otherwise, they might use the concentrator how it is giving out low concentration, and this cannot be helpful to the patients. All right, so next I'm going to look at filters. So oxygen concentrator filters, they protect the concentrator and patients from dust and other inhalable particles and risk of infection. So the concentrator has different filters that are placed in different locations, and these include the gross particle filters, intake filters, bacteria filters, and these usually come with concentrator, but it's used to have spares. It is good to have spares because it is not advisable to use concentrators without filters. And filters are regularly replaced during maintenance. Some filters, they may be washable, like for example, the air-safe concentrators, they use an intake filter that is washable. So for those filters, when they become visibly dirty, you just wash them with soapy water and then let them air dry before putting it back. For the other model of concentrators like the Devil Beast 525, they do not have a washable intake filter. They use what is called the HEPA filter that is not washable. So for those when they become visibly dirty, it is advisable to just replace them. So thank you, Maui.
Thank you very much, Patani, for that explanation. That was well detailed. Right, I see we have a hand from Aubrey. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on what Patani has said. From my experience, I know that the Longfian J5 comes with the nasal cannulas. So for all those people that want to purchase that model of concentrator, you know that one of the accessories that you receive is the nasal cannulas. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Aubrey, for that addition. So I just have one question for you, Fatani. So you have talked about the humidifier bottles, you have talked about the Christmas trees, but I have encountered some other concentrators which have a bulb connector. So it's a connector that you can't screw a Christmas tree on. So how do you connect those to the humidifier bottles? What accessory is there available for that?
I, for one, haven't encountered that situation. Maybe I will just leave the question open to the my other colleagues So if anyone knows the answer to that question, they can take it.
Yep. Anyone from the technicians panel or the audience, you are all free to respond to that. Okay, no one. So I'm going to help you out with this one. So the concentrator that I encountered was, I think it was a UL7F, if I'm not mistaken. So normally, okay, so Kelvin has typed in the chat, there's a response, and he says the Cantor V8 uses a plastic tubing to connect to the humidifier bottle. Yeah, so this is true. So the UL7F that I'm talking about also has the plastic tubing that Kelvin is just telling us in the chat. So the tubing has a connector on one end that has some threads. So it's like a metal connector that allows you to plug it and screw it onto the humidifier bottle. So you would normally get the plastic tubing plus the connector. So you screw on the connector to the humidifier bottle, and then that gives you the flexibility of still being able to connect it to the humidifier bottle. All right, so thank you very much, Kelvin, for that. Do we have any other questions or comments on this question before we move on? Okay, we don't. So moving on to our next question, and it says, hello, I'm a biomedical technician at Mchinji District Hospital. We went for a 2-week holiday in December 2022 and resumed work on 2nd of January. I have found a Vubis 525KS that was working fine when we left for the holiday, sounding an oxygen alarm. So when they were going for the holiday, the oxygen concentrator was fine. They came back and then they found the oxygen concentrator giving out an alarm. So after measuring the purity, I found it is 66%, but I had refilled the sieve beds 2 weeks before the holiday. What could be the problem and how can it be rectified? So I'm going to ask one of our technicians to respond to this one. I see we have a hand from Sharon. Go ahead, Sharon.
Thank you, Mari. An oxygen concentrator operates under the principle of pressure swing absorption. So in this process, room air is drawn into the unit by the compressor. This room air is then directed to the sieve beds where nitrogen, a dominant constituent of air, gets trapped and later on based on the exhaust. So this is made possible by a special type of molecular sieve called zeolite, which is filled inside the sieve beds, which you have in a concentrator, and they are in pairs. So expectations are that once you refill the sieve beds, the purity will improve significantly. This is not the case sometimes, as a lot of other factors can come into play and affect the purity of oxygen from a concentrator that has just been refilled. So before you refill, you need to make sure everything else in the concentrator is in perfect condition. So we are looking at the compressor, the valves, make sure they are all working perfectly. The first cause of low purity after refilling sieve beds is leakages in the system. So refilling beds involves removing them from the concentrator and refilling the beds in a room where humidity is below 50%. When putting back the beds, leakages can occur in joining places. So this will allow the oxygen or air to escape from the system. Leakages before the sieve bed will cause a drop in pressure, and this will affect the PCA process in the sieve bed, and purity will decrease. And leakages after the sieve bed causes a drop in oxygen purity. Since the oxygen is lost to the surrounding, you can check for leakages in an oxygen concentrator by using soapy water and applying the foam to all connection points. So bubbles will appear where there are leaks. So you can fix these leaks by tightening the joints using cable ties or hose clips. And remember that if you have joints with threaded fittings, thread tape should be used to avoid leakages. The other cause could be the environment in which you left your concentrator. If you left the concentrator in a humid environment when going for holidays, especially if it had leaks, the water will get into the system and damage the zeolite inside the sieve bed. So if this is the reason, then you need to refill the sieve beds again. Thank you, Mai.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for that response. I hope that was clear. And if you try out the solutions that she has suggested, then I'm sure you're going to get around your problem. But in case you still have some more problems, you can always get in touch with us. So just a reminder, if it's your first time joining us, we encourage you to share with us your email address. So this helps us to be sending you frequent updates of new material that we have produced. And it also helps us to send you reminders of the next Concentrator Talk code. So you can just paste your email in the chat and then we'll add you to our mailing list. Sharon, you have an extra comment.
I have a question for my fellow technicians.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so there was a time I came across a concentrator at a certain facility where I went for repairs. It was a Canter V8, 8 liters. So its land hours showed 0. I switched it on to check the purity. I expected the purity to be 95.6 since the hours were 0, meaning it was never used before. But to my surprise, when I tried to test the purity, at 8 liters, I got 85.5%. So when I asked if they have ever used it, I was told that they unboxed it like 6 months ago and they never used it on a patient. So I wondered what might have caused the drop in purity. Instead of giving 95%, it had to give 85.5% at the maximum liters for the concentrator. So anyone who can help what the cause might be.
Okay, anyone could be one from our technicians panel or from the audience. We are all free to respond to that question. So that's a scenario that Sharon encountered while working in the field. Okay, we have a hand from Fatsani. Go ahead.
All right. So I can think of two reasons as to why there was a drop in purity. First of all, it's saying that the concentrator was unboxed and then left for 6 months without use. So a major factor that can come into play to drop the purity of that concentrator is the environment. So if you left the concentrator in a humid environment, that is the environment that has a high humidity, it might happen that the water might got into the system, and inside the system they might go into the sieve beds, and inside the sieve beds they reduce the effectiveness of zeolite, the effectiveness of zeolite to perform the process of pressure swing adsorption. So it is good to store oxygen concentrators in a dry environment where the humidity is less than 50%. That is, the humidity is below 50%. This is the reason why when we want to refill our sieve beds, we require a room whose humidity is below 50%, because zeolite, we call it a descant. It's a descant. That means it has a higher affinity for water than nitrogen. So if you left the machine in an environment that is humid, that water vapor might have gotten into the system and thereby disrupted the zeolite effectiveness. The other reason that I might think of is when you purchase the concentrator, you are never sure about how long the concentrator stayed on the shelf without switching it on. So when a concentrator has stayed for so long without switching it on, the zeolite also loses its effectiveness, because the zeolite is made to work at high pressures for it to keep on functioning properly. So it is good to switch on routinely a concentrator that is not in use by patients, maybe for 15 minutes, to just allow the zeolite to be subjected to a higher pressure so that its effectiveness is still maintained. Thank you. If anyone has anything to add.
Thank you very much, Fatsani. That was well detailed. I don't know if anyone has some additional comments on that. Sharon, are you satisfied with that response?
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll be moving on with our questions. And our next question says, I work at a certain hospital as a technician, and we have an air intensity concentrator in the wards. I know a concentrator makes noise when it is running, but this concentrator makes a lot of noise that is becoming unbearable for the patients in the wards. Why is this concentrator producing such noise, and how can this noise be reduced? So I'll ask one of our technicians to answer this one. Okay, we have a hand from Aubrey. You can go ahead.
So, noise from oxygen concentrators are inevitable, but too much noise is really not good for the patient who is connected to the concentrator. Too much noise from the concentrator can also signify an underlying problem that can cause the unit to malfunction. Different brands or models of oxygen concentrators produce different levels of noise. For example, the air set intensity noise level is 48 dB, and the Beast 515 and 525 also have a noise level of up to 48 decibels. Excess noise from oxygen concentrators can be caused by a number of factors, and some of them are broken shock absorbers. Different models of oxygen concentrators have either a rubber shock absorber or a spring shock absorber for their compressors. For example, the Beast 515 and Beast 525 have compressors that are mounted on rubber shock absorbers, while the J5, Foley, and AirStep compressors are mounted on spring shock absorbers. All the vibrations that are produced as the compressor is working are absorbed by these rubber mounts and springs. The shock absorbers also prevent the production of high-pitched noise, which can occur when the compressor hits the case of the oxygen concentrators, by restricting movement of the compressor during the operation. However, these rubber mounts and springs break and degrade with time due to internal heat and repeated usage. Shock absorbers can also be damaged when repairing the compressor. Worn out shock absorbers have to be replaced in order to reduce the noise from the compressor. Another reason is loose screws and internal components of the concentrator. These can also lead to high levels of noise. There are times when screws are not tightened all the way after the concentrator has been serviced, and the vibration produced by oxygen concentrators can cause these screws to get loose. This can in turn cause the increase in noise level, since the components keep on hitting the case of the oxygen concentrator. So you have to make sure that if you service the compressor, you tighten all the screws all the way for you to prevent these increased noise levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aubrey, for that explanation. I see we have a hand from Fatsani. You have some comments that you need to make.
Yes, I just want to add to what Aubrey has said.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so sometimes honored compressor service kits, there might be a reason for a concentrator to produce a lot of noise. So the compressor kits, for example, the cylinder sleeves, the caps, flapper valves, O-rings, and have the head gaskets. So what happens is when the piston caps and the cylinder sleeves inside the compressor are on out, the compressor produces a squeaking loud sound. This is because the cap retainer may be hitting the sleeves as the piston is moving up and down. And also sometimes the squeaking sound might not be there when the service kits are on out, but the compressor, it makes a loud noise that is not like, for example, the squeaking sound. It might be very audible to the users. So therefore, it is very important to check the status of the compressor, and you need to service it when the compressor, the concentrator is producing a squeaking sound. Thank you, ma'am.
Right. Thank you, Fatani, for that additional comment. So yeah, there are a lot of things that can cause these type of noises. I remember this other time I was working on a certain concentrator with Eunice, and it started making a lot of noise. And we checked the compressor, but everything seems fine. And upon further troubleshooting, we realized that one of the screws that holds the compressor in place got removed. So as the compressor was running, it started to move slowly until it started hitting the side. So it started producing a very loud vibrating noise. So sometimes it could be the service kits, sometimes it could be that there's a loose part somewhere. So you just need to make sure that you are looking at all these things that work together. All right, so reaching this far, we need to take a slight diversion from our questions and jump on to our topic of interest. So as I explained at the beginning, today we'll be talking about safety when dealing with oxygen concentrators. So Eunice has prepared a few things that she is going to present to us. So over to you, Eunice.
Thank you very much, Maui. So, as Maui has already said, today we're going to talk about safety when handling oxygen concentrators. So, we all know that oxygen concentrators deliver oxygen that will be used by the patients. So, we want these machines to be safe for both the patients and also that our concentrator should not be in any situation where it can be damaged. So oxygen concentrators are a type of medical device that work to produce oxygen-rich air that is then delivered to patients. This equipment achieves this by drawing in room air using the compressor. The compressed air then is fed to the seed beds via a valve block. Inside the seed beds, there is a molecular sieve called zeolite. So this zeolite molecular sieve is able to selectively retain nitrogen when there is a high pressure and then release this nitrogen through an exhaust when the pressure drops. The remaining air then has a higher percentage of oxygen and is then directed to the product tank. From there, it is directed to the patient after passing through some components like the pressure regulator, flow meter, bacteria filter, etc. So just like any other medical device, an oxygen concentrator is susceptible to a number of safety issues if it is not used properly. These safety issues can affect the concentrator itself, reducing its lifespan or even rendering it unusable in extreme situations. These safety issues can also affect the users of the concentrator in one way or the other. So now let's look at the equipment itself. One of the things that we need to consider for our oxygen concentrator to be safe is the location. Where is our oxygen concentrator located? Where it is located safe? So as I've already said, oxygen concentrators take ambient air through the gross particle filter, which is extended to the machine. So these machines use ambient air from the environment, and this air enters the concentrator using the gross particle filter. So if you place the oxygen concentrator in surroundings where its airflow is restricted, for example, placing the side of the concentrator that has the gross particle filter near the wall, this is not safe for the concentrator because it will not be able to suck in enough air, resulting in low oxygen purity. As you can see in the graphics, you can see where that concentrator is located. We cannot even see where the gross particle filter is. So the gross particle filter is located at the back and it is facing the wall. So how will air enter through the gross particle filter? It will be very difficult. And as you can see, we can see it is near the wood and there are also wires around that concentrator. So even the user cannot even pass properly around that concentrator, and that is not very safe. So make sure that whenever you are placing your oxygen concentrator, it should be an environment that is free of the cables or any other thing that can obstruct the flow of air. So placing the oxygen concentrator near the wall or close to any other obstructing object can also cause the oxygen concentrator to overheat. This is because the wall blocks the air circulation vents from either releasing heat from the concentrator into the atmosphere or introducing cool air from the atmosphere into the concentrator. So this also results in low oxygen purity. Never place the oxygen concentrator against the wall, curtains, or furniture, or in any closet. Room air must freely flow into the unit for our oxygen concentrator to be safe. Always place the concentrator on a hard surface and never place the concentrator on a surface such as a bed or a couch. This may cause the concentrator to tip or fall. As you can see, that concentrator, of course, it's not in use, but whenever you're using it, make sure you don't place it on places like that, like on the chair or on the bed. It's not safe. It can fall anytime because these machines have tires and they can move anytime. So make sure they are placed down and not on top surfaces. As you can also see in the graphics, please. Yeah, so do not place the concentrator on metallic surfaces, as these surfaces easily conduct heat, which hinders heat transfer between the concentrator and the surrounding. So this will lead to overheating and it will lead to low oxygen purity. So please, these machines have tires. If you place them on a place that they can easily move, they can even fall down and break, or even have an impact on the patient if they fall on the patient. So please, be careful on how you are placing these machines. Another thing that we need to take a look into is dust and toxicological harm gas. So for our machines to be safe, we need to be very careful of dust. Dust has a negative impact on oxygen concentrators, even if concentrators have filters to trap this dust. And these filters include the gross particle filters I've already talked about as I was beginning the presentation, and also we have the intake filter. But too much exposure of the dust to the machine is very harmful because the dust will clog the filters, obstructing air intake. Therefore, there will be less oxygen entering the machine, leading to low oxygen purity. As you can see in the graphics, the graphics shows a gross particle filter, and it is very dirty, as you can see. So if it's very dirty, that means the pores in which the air enters are blocked, and it is not easy for air to enter into the machine. So please make sure that these filters are always clean. Make sure that the environment that you are placing the oxygen concentrator is dust-free, and also periodically blow the oxygen concentrator of the dust and wash the gross particle filters. And after washing the gross particle filters, wait until they are completely dry, and then you can replace them. Also, be careful of toxic gases, as these may negatively react with the zeolite or other components in the concentrator. I know here in Malawi or even in other countries, dust may be found everywhere, but don't deliberately place the concentrator in a dusty place, expecting the filters to filter that dust for you. That is not very good. So for those in dusty areas, make sure you clean the gross particle filter weekly and change the intake filter when needed. And be alert and inspect the filter for the oxygen concentrator regularly. Another thing that we need to consider for the safety of our oxygen concentrators are combustible materials. So oxygen concentrators produce oxygen from ambient air, as I've already said, and oxygen is a highly flammable gas. So exposing this highly flammable oxygen gas to materials that can cause fire will cause explosions, and the concentrator can also be destroyed by the fire. And even those that are in the room where that concentrator was, that means they'll also be affected. So for concentrators to be safe, make sure that its environment is free from anything that can cause fire. And these combustible materials, just to mention a few, include oils, greases, aerosol sprays, lotions, or solvents. And also avoid petroleum-based products where oxygen is in use. And also avoid the use of products that contain alcohol. So as you can see in the graphics, of course the graphics are not, okay, fine. So, and also avoid smoking. If you are taking care of a patient and you know that you smoke, please don't smoke near the oxygen concentrator. It's very dangerous because the oxygen that is being produced is prone to combustion, and while you are smoking, you can cause problems at that area. Another thing that we need to take into consideration is electricity supply. Most of the oxygen concentrators that we use in our hospitals use AC voltage. You need to check the voltage rating of the oxygen concentrator before plugging into power. If an oxygen concentrator uses 230 volts AC, for example, and the voltage that is being received is less, then the compressor will not be able to run or it will underperform. This will have a negative impact on the flow or pressure, affecting the purity of the oxygen. If the electricity is not stable, it can have a negative impact in a way that the fuse may be blown off and the concentrator cannot operate properly. So some concentrators use 120 volts to run. So if your sockets are giving 230, please make sure that you have a step-down transformer to get that 120 volts. So make sure you have checked the power rating before plugging the concentrator to any power supply. Another thing that we need to consider is exposure to water. An oxygen concentrator is a machine that operates using electricity. So exposing the concentrator to water, for example, if water falls maybe on the socket or on the board, sparks may develop and the board may burn. So if the board is burnt, that means the concentrator cannot operate. So please be careful of water. Don't expose the concentrator to water. So in case you're using the concentrator in a place that is exposed to gases that are prone to fire, such as kerosene lamps, the graphics, please, okay. So some places, maybe you don't have an option, but you just need to use these kerosene lamps. Please make sure that you are always there when the concentrator is in operation and that you always have a fire extinguisher and use that fire extinguisher in case maybe there is fire. Now, let's look at the safety of the machines to our patients. So, oxygen concentrators render some safety concerns to patients, physicians, and other users. So, in safety, we need to look at the flow. So, one of the things that we need to take note for the concentrator to be safe for the patient is the flow. Medical personnel prescribe the required flow for any patient depending on the condition of the patient. The component that shows how much flow is coming from the concentrator is the flow meter. So flow is measured in liters per minute. So an oxygen concentrator cannot operate without the flow meter because you will not be able to know how much flow the patient is receiving. More or less oxygen will be harmful to the patient. So make sure that the flow meter is in position and it is not leaking. The floating ball should be able to move freely. If the ball is fluctuating, there might be some leakages. There might be some leakages in the oxygen concentrator. So seal these leakages so that the patient can receive enough oxygen as prescribed by the physician. So if you see that the oxygen purity has dropped, please do not proceed to giving that oxygen to the patient. As you can see in the graphics, the ball is at 4 liters per minute. So you're going to set it according to what the doctor has told you to set it. So please, if they've told you to set it at 2, don't say, no, the patient is suffering, maybe the condition is too bad, let me put it at 4. Please follow the instructions, because sometimes we hear cases that they were on oxygen therapy and they died. Sometimes it's because we don't follow we don't follow what the doctor has said, because the doctors know how much should be given to the patient. So we don't want to lose patients because we haven't set the flow meter at the right rate. So another thing that we need to consider is purity. So for the patient to be safe, the patients have to receive a percentage of 82 going up. That's the percentage of oxygen. If the gas that the patient is receiving is not rich in oxygen, then it can be very harmful to the patient. They can even die. So before administering oxygen to the patient, make sure you use an oxygen analyzer to test for the oxygen purity and also the pressure. If you see that the purity is not enough, you can now start troubleshooting to see to check what's causing the low oxygen purity. So you can check if the compressor service kits are not worn out, because if they are worn out, then the compressor will not be able to supply the necessary ambient air for the pressure absorption process at the recommended pressure, and also check if the zeolite is not degraded. Degraded zeolite will not efficiently bind nitrogen, leading to low oxygen purity. You need to check for the number of hours that the oxygen concentrator has been running, because if the number of hours is just more, then there is a high chance that the zeolite is degraded or the compressor kits are worn out. Sometimes the solenoid or roller valve may be faulty, such that the feeding and wasting processes may be compromised. So if the valves are not switching properly, sometimes maybe only one segment can be fed with ambient air, or the other one is not fed, and that can lead to low oxygen purity. So if there is low purity, please troubleshoot and fix all the problems that are causing the low oxygen purity. If you let the oxygen concentrator operate while giving low purity, then the patient will not be able to receive enough oxygen necessary for their condition. So even if the flow meter has been set at the required rate. So another thing that we need to consider, peripheral devices used. So all oxygen concentrator will have a humidifier bottle. So this bottle is attached to a concentrator to moisten the air. The oxygen passes through water before coming out of the concentrator and being breathed in via a mask or a nasal cannula. Fill the humidifier bottle with distilled water to the maximum fill and do not overfill. Do not use any other type of water because it can be contaminated by microbes, which can harm the patient. So once a week, disconnect the humidifier bottle and clean with soapy water. Rinse well and refill with distilled water. It is extremely important that you assemble the humidifier bottles correctly to avoid any leaks, or you may not be receiving the amount of oxygen prescribed. So that's the humidifier bottle, as you can see in the graphics. So when other devices such as oxygen squeezers, nebulizers, anesthesia machines are used, please check connections from the concentrator to the patient. Make sure the pipes are not kinked and the flow should be monitored. So if we do all these things, I believe the oxygen concentrator can be safe for our patients, and also the concentrator can be safe that it cannot be destroyed. Thank you very much, Maui.
Thank you very much, Eunice, for that topic. That was well detailed. There is a lot of information there that we have learned from, and I've learned a thing or two from that. I'm sure each and every one of us has managed to also pick up one thing or two. If we have any questions or comments on the topic that Eunice has just presented to us, we are free to ask those questions or make those comments. So you can either just come off mute and ask the question, or you can just paste it in the chat and then I'll just read it out. Okay, so it seems we do not have any further questions. So, okay, I have a comment in the chat and it says exposed wires are also a hazard. So this is from Kelvin. Yeah, so that's true. So we always need to make sure that when we're working with these machines, always that all the wires are covered, because if the wires are exposed and then maybe someone is trying to clean the floor area, they might get some water on the bare wires, and that will cause a short circuit, which would either hurt the person that is cleaning or maybe even damage the machine. So always make sure that all the exposed wires are sealed. So looking at the time, we are past the hour mark, and this brings us to the end of our call today. Apologies for the going past our time, but I felt like Eunice should finish up her topic so that next week we just pick up from a different one. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us for our first call for today. As I explained at the beginning, this is a new year. We have a lot of things planned, and we'll be producing a lot more videos this time around, and we'll be pasting those videos on our website. I'll paste the link in the chat, and then we also have a YouTube channel. That's where we paste all our recorded versions of the call. So if you happen to have missed any of our calls in 2022, you can just go on YouTube, search for Oxygen Alliance, and you're going to catch up on all the calls that we had. We also have some maintenance videos. We have some specific for rotary valves, specific for compressors. So if you are looking for maintenance videos, you can also go on our YouTube channel. These videos are also linked to our website, so you will also be able to find them. So thank you for joining us, and we'll meet again here next week, Thursday, same time, 2 to 3 p.m. Central African time. And I hope you have a wonderful week and enjoy your weekends. Bye, everyone.